Hi, my name is Lisa, and I want to share with you my story today. My story starts out as a rescue story, and it ends with a story of redemption. So, my story starts out before I was born. My biological mother suffered from mental illness, mental disorders, and she was not a stable person. It's very sad when I think about her. I never had the chance to meet her, but I know she was tormented all of her life. At a young age, she struggled, and back then, mental illness had a stigma, and families didn't like to talk about it. So it just stayed within the family, and she had a daughter that's 10 years older than me. She wasn't able to take care of her. So she was adopted within my mother's family, and 10 years later, she was pregnant with me. And it truly is a miracle that I'm here today, because I think as a mom now, I look back on when I was pregnant with my children and how much love I had for them and how I wanted to protect them, and they meant the world to me, and I would do anything for them. And when I was later told about my birth story, it really hurt me, because I can't imagine a mother not being able to take care of their children. But at the same time, the adult Lisa understood that mental illness is a terrible thing, that I know it wasn't her fault, so I don't have any anger or bad feelings towards her. But I was born in Southern California on May 3rd, 1978. And because my older sister was taken from her, Child Protective Services were already a part of her life before I was born, and I was privy to some caseworker notes later in life, and it was very surreal to see your life unfold on typewriter paper from a caseworker. And some of the questions they asked my mother was like, when your newborn arrives, where are you going to live? How are you going to have money or food? And she didn't really have any good answers. And so the first 2 weeks of my life, I don't know what happened, and that's probably a good thing. I know she didn't have any place to live, and we were on the streets. So at 2 weeks old, Child Protective Services was involved, and I was found sunburnt. I had an infection in my mouth. My umbilical cord was infected. I had a failure to thrive, and so I was immediately removed from her care. Later, I found out that we didn't have a place to live, and in Southern California, it's really sunny, and we had been living in a public park, and that's why I was so sunburnt. And so they contacted relatives, and at this point, because of her mental illness and rage, she was just a very angry person. A lot of her family just didn't want to have anything to do with her, but my aunt and her husband said they would take me, and I was in foster care for a few years, and they adopted me when I was 2 years old. So those are my parents, my mom and dad. And I had a great childhood. I know I was placed with them for a reason, and I was rescued from the life that my mother was going to give me, and I knew I had I now know that the Lord placed me with these two people, and they were the best parents anyone could ask for. I felt safe, I felt secure, and most importantly, I was loved. So When I was a child, I went to a private school, and that was really my first introduction to religion. Um, at a young age, I was very confused, and it just didn't seem right in this religion that I was told how to pray, when to pray, what to say, and that I would need to confess my sins to someone. And growing up, I was the only child in the house, so I really didn't get in trouble much, and I just knew what was expected of me to confess sins. And at a young age, I remember lying about sinning just to please the people around me, that I had something to confess. And I thought, is this what God wants us to do? This does not feel right. This doesn't seem right. And I just never felt a connection with God. I did get baptized at a certain age because that's what we did. That was, again, expected. And I, again, never had a relationship with God, despite being baptized. At around age 9, we moved to the Midwest, and we didn't go to church. I didn't have a relationship with God at all. But I grew up, like I said, my home life was great. At age 19, I met someone and I got married very early, and I was very naive about life. And this person was 11 years older than me, and again, I was very naive. This person did things that I didn't agree with. There was drugs, there was criminal activity, there was adultery, there was abuse, and the psychological abuse by far was the worst. We had 2 children, and I found myself in a situation that I could not get out of. I didn't know how. This person had such a hold on me that I was living day by day, minute by minute. Because when you're with someone that has such a hold on you psychologically, and you know they're not living life right, it's kind of like their threats. I mean, what do they have to lose? So I was always living in fear. When my boys were 2 and 5, I got the courage to leave this person. I filed a restraining order, I filed for divorce, and I fled that marriage. The main reason was my children. I did not want them to grow up to think this is how a man treats a woman. I didn't want them to think this is a father's role in the home, was to do all these horrible things. And that was a very difficult time in my life, but I knew it needed to be done. As a single mom, I went to school, I went to college, I worked 2 jobs, and I knew that being the head of my little family, I wanted my children to know God, and I wanted to start going to church. So, because I thought that's how you get to know God, is you have to go to a building. And so I was approached by some really nice people, and again, even though I had went to a private school and I'd been baptized, I didn't know anything about the Bible other than what people told me. And so this religion, which was different than the religion I did know, sounded right. It sounded like it was the way to get to God. And after a few years, I realized that I'm not any closer to God in this religion. I'm being, again, told what to pray, what to read, where to be, and there was no encouragement of having a personal relationship with God. So at this point, being single and having 2 sons, I do remember praying a lot about, Lord, please send someone to me. I want someone that that I can be with, that my children can see as a good man, and someone, I want to be married. I want that nuclear family that I had growing up. And at this point, I didn't, go to bars and I didn't go to dating websites. So I just remember saying, Lord, bring me someone, please send him to me. And the Lord answered my prayer because my current husband, we met in my backyard. He literally sent him to me, and that's a very funny story. But from that day on, we've always been together. And it was, looking back on it, it was amazing how we met because he had a failed marriage and had 3 sons. And I, of course, am divorced with 2 sons, and they were all about the same age, and they were all boys. And it just seemed like we were an instant family. We moved really fast in together. And that was the problem. It seemed very convenient to be together, and we didn't have God in our life at all. We just decided to move in together and be an instant family. And I now realize that that's not the way God intended a family to be. And so after the new wore off, we were left with a toxic relationship that had a lot of dishonesty, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. And now we were in a situation where we were kind of together out of convenience. So that family dynamic that I really wanted for my children, we still didn't have. Around this same time, I decided, well, how can I make my situation better? So I got into some occult things, psychics, mediums, crystals, tarot cards. And looking back on it now, that is something that has always been intriguing to me. I remember as a young child going to the public library and checking out a book about ESP or telekinesis and all these things that I didn't realize were not of God and were evil. I viewed them as interesting, intriguing, and mysterious. And so at this point in my life, I had went to psychic fairs. I even did so much as rearrange the furniture in my house, hoping that the energy would be better. I'd put crystals in certain places in my home, hoping that their energy would help ease the tension, that we would find the love that we both wanted, but we didn't have. And I didn't realize how dangerous that was. This is also the time that I was really into anything paranormal. And we were watching things and taking in things that were very dangerous. And at the time, I had no idea. As a result, our home was tormented even more. We saw things in our home. We heard things in our home. People in my family experienced sleep paralysis, waking up feeling that there were presence in the room and a force holding them in the bed. I mean, just very scary, real things that you only see in the movies was happening in our home. And looking back on it, I remember being scared a little, but almost still intrigued. And that's really how those things get a foothold in your home, because you think, well, this isn't dangerous. This is kind of, borderline exciting, and, nothing's really going to hurt me. And little did we know that opening that door, looking to objects and psychic and people and magic to fix our problems, was basically inviting in evil and all of their friends into our home. So I feel like our family got to a breaking point with just the strife and anger and just just all the darkness in our home. And I remember very vividly, it was April of 2021. I felt a tug at my heart and my soul to get my family into church. And we had never been to church as a family. At this point, we'd been together 11 years, still not married. Now we have 6 children. We had a child together. And I don't know, something came over me that I thought, we need to go to church. Because out of all the holidays, even with the limited knowledge I had really about the Bible, I knew that Jesus died on a cross, and that's the day we commemorate what he did for us. And so I remember my son had a little friend that he met in preschool, and they just happened to be on the same basketball team that winter. And I got to know his mom, and we had a couple play dates, and I just remember how passionate she was about her faith. And so when I was thinking about going to a church, we live in a town with a lot of churches and different denominations, and how do you pick, right? And I just thought, I want to go to their church. So we did. And I will remember that day forever, because that is the day that I encountered the Lord personally for the first time in my life in my 40s. I'd been baptized twice before, never felt the presence of the Lord. I walked in, and I felt good. And the worship music started, and I just started weeping. It was like, I don't even know what songs they were playing, but the lyrics to the songs were like, it was like my soul and my heart was crying out those words. And I remember just kind of almost running out with tissues. And again, this is my first time at this church, and I just searched for a room where no one was in. And I remember I found a classroom, and I just wept. And this overwhelming feeling of love, and almost like a father's arms wrapping himself around you. Like I've been here. I've been with you every step of the way. I've been with you. I've protected you. And I'm here, and there was no condemnation feeling. There was nothing but love. And I just remember feeling like I was in my Father's arms. And it was so hard to get out of that moment. I didn't want to leave that moment. And the service, everything about that day was like speaking to me personally. And I remember we went home, and I asked I asked my boyfriend at the time, he wasn't my husband yet, I said, I want to go back to that church. Now, this is someone who never went to church, not even as a child. And he immediately said, okay. And it was almost like I knew, like we didn't talk about my experience. I didn't ask him, did he have an experience? It's like we just knew. And every time we went, it was like the Lord was using people to minister to us individually exactly what we needed to hear. And there was a lot of guilt that why didn't we do this before now? Why was I looking at all this stupid stuff to help our problems when God has been here this whole time? We have never tapped into the love that God has for us. And I think it was the third time we attended church. The pastor was speaking, and again, he was speaking to me personally, and he talked about the woman at the well and how Jesus knew that she was living with a man that wasn't married to her. And I just remember hearing it in a way that was spoke right to us. And I remember turning to him and saying, like, do they know? Like, do they know we're not married? Oh my goodness. And, looking back on it, we could have taken that as these people are going to judge us. Let's just go somewhere else. But instead, I will never forget, we went home. I got open my Bible and I started reading it. And I just remember saying, we've got to get married. We have to get married. Like, what are we doing? Like, and obviously the conversation was longer than that, but I just remember Eric immediately saying, okay. And we literally that day made plans to get married after 11 years of not seeing the point. So we heard God loud and clear. And from that moment on, our household changed. It wasn't dark, it was light. We didn't need someone to come cleanse our home. God did it within us. And our children changed over time. And we have just seen so many things in our life change when we surrendered, when we took God's counsel, when we basically said yes to Him. Like, that's all we had to do. We didn't have to go do these legalistic things in other religions that I had been a part of, where you have to say this and do this. And it wasn't that at all. It was literally just opening yourself up to have a relationship with your Heavenly Father. And there's been so many blessings from the beginning of our walk with the Lord. A couple of them I just wanted to share because I feel like when I tell my story, I'm giving God glory. And so one of them was, we have been free of like financial, we've been blessed financially. We've been able to get out of debt. We've been able to just So I actually had a miraculous healing this year. I have been, it's amazing when you have that first encounter with the Lord. It's like nothing you can even put into words. And then when you experience a miraculous healing, it's like even better, and it's hard to put into words. But I remember I had come up to the altar because I had pain in my knees, and the person who was at the altar speaking was, talking about healing and coming forward. And I remember them saying that someone right now is being healed in their knees. You are feeling a heat sensation and now a tingling. And I knew that was me, because right before he said those words, that's exactly the sensation I felt, and my knees stopped hurting immediately. And that's just one of the many miracles that God can do for anyone. It's not just me. I'm not special. I mean, I know now that God was with me from before I was even born. He had a purpose for me, and He rescued me from that situation of my birth. And He was with me through that divorce and through all that struggle. And He was with me when I was, unknowingly tapping into evil and not realizing what I was doing for me and my family, what compromising position that we were being put in. But He never gave up on me. And I'm just so grateful. And I can't even put into words the amount of love that I feel when I speak about my life and when I give a testimony, because I just want everyone to feel the same way. And you can. And if my life story can be inspiring in that, it doesn't matter how you came into this world. It doesn't matter what you've done or things in your past or how old you are. I was in my middle 40s before I even really knew God. And so I pray this story blesses you, and I just give all the glory to God, and thank you for hearing my story.